Climate change is not an abstract idea. It is a daily struggle, one that threatens homes, livelihoods, and lives. In 2022, Pakistan faced one of the worst climate disasters in its history. Unprecedented monsoon rains and melting glaciers triggered floods that covered 1/3 of the country. More than 33 million people were affected. Villages that had stood for generations were erased from the map. Families lost their homes, their crops, and their livestock. The floods destroyed schools, hospitals, and entire communities. And 3 years later, millions of those people still have not been fully rehabilitated. Many remain displaced, living in temporary shelters or with relatives, waiting for the chance to rebuild their lives. For those families, climate change isn't a theory or a debate. It's the memory of water rising through their streets, washing away everything they owned. It's the grief of losing children to disease outbreaks that followed. It's the uncertainty of wondering if the next monsoon season will bring relief or more destruction. But this is not only Pakistan's story. Across South and Southeast Asia, the same pattern repeats. In Bangladesh, rising sea levels are swallowing coastal villages. In Nepal, melting glaciers are threatening mountain communities. In India, deadly heat waves are breaking records year after year. In the Philippines, storms are becoming more powerful, more frequent, and more destructive. The entire region is living through a humanitarian crisis shaped by a warming planet. And yet, there's a cruel irony in all of this. The countries suffering the most from climate change are often the ones least responsible for causing it. Pakistan contributes less than 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Still, it ranks among the top nations most vulnerable to climate disasters. Meanwhile, the biggest emitters, wealthy industrialized countries like the United States, China, and many in Europe, continue to produce the majority of the world's carbon pollution. This imbalance reveals a painful truth. Those who did the least to create the crisis are the ones paying the highest price. Behind every number and every headline are real human beings. A farmer in Sindh who can no longer plant wheat because the soil is poisoned with salt left behind by floods. A mother walking miles to find clean water because the wells are contaminated. A young boy who no longer goes to school because his classroom is now a shelter for displaced families. These are not isolated tragedies. They are the lived experiences of millions of people caught in the crossfire between nature and neglect. The humanitarian consequences run deep. Floods and droughts destroy crops, leading to food shortages and hunger. Contaminated water spreads diseases like cholera and malaria. Heat waves cause illness, especially among children and the elderly. Health systems already under strain are pushed to the brink. Economies falter. And with each disaster, families slip further into poverty, making recovery even harder. While these stories unfold, much of the world looks on, often with sympathy, sometimes with short-term aid, but rarely with lasting action. It's easy to view climate change as something happening over there, far from our daily lives. But the truth is, the same emissions warming the air in Los Angeles or New York are melting glaciers in the Himalayas. The same pollution from factories and cars that fuels comfort in one part of the world brings catastrophe to another. The atmosphere does not recognize borders. The climate crisis connects us all. For wealthier nations, this reality brings a responsibility, not out of charity, but out of justice. Climate finance promised to developing nations must be delivered, not delayed. Investments in clean energy, climate-resilient infrastructure, and early warning systems are essential. These are not handouts. They are repayments of a global debt. And beyond financial aid, the world must act to reduce emissions drastically and immediately. Every ton of carbon prevented today is one less disaster tomorrow. But responsibility isn't limited to governments. Each of us, as individuals, has a role to play. The choices we make, what we buy, how we travel, how we consume energy, ripple outward. Supporting organisations that provide relief and reconstruction in flood-affected areas makes a real difference. Speaking about these issues, sharing stories, and raising awareness helps keep the human face of climate change visible. Change begins with awareness, but it must end with action. Amid all the loss, there are glimmers of hope. Across Pakistan, communities are showing remarkable resilience. In Sindh and